I want to briefly start with just something that I didn't have an opportunity to mention yesterday about Isra and Mi'raj that my brother here thought would be worthwhile for people to know. One of the early controversies with regards to the Isra and Mi'raj was the nature. Was it a physical experience where he physically was transported in body, or was it his spirit or ruh? And the majority of the companions held that it was a physical transportation and ascension. But a minority, and foremost among them, Aisha radiallahu anha, was adamant that it was not physical. And to explain this, one of the very famous scholars of later times, Ibn Taymiyyah, tried to summarize why the difference. In the time that the companions existed, the concern was that, was it physical or was it a dream? So in their mind, the two choices were physical and dream. And if it was a dream, then it's not very significant because all of us have dreams. So to not wanting to downplay the nature of the Isra and Mi'raj, they rejected the idea that it was a dream. But when Aisha radiallahu anha insisted that it was not physical, this is what Ibn Taymiyyah says, she's not saying that it was a dream. She is saying it's something akin to what happens when you die, when your body and soul separate. And that gift was given to the Prophet ﷺ in his lifetime as opposed to what we would experience after our death. So if you look at all the ahadith that relate to the Isra and Mi'raj, and the one that we quoted yesterday which talked about the splitting of the chest and the washing of the heart and the filling of the faith, or the one in which the Prophet ﷺ leads all the other prophets in prayer in Jerusalem in a masjid that did not exist at that time because it had already been destroyed, you can see that it must have been something spiritual because all those prophets had passed away, but it was real. It was as real as anything physical because it was real that these souls that the Prophet ﷺ met were the actual souls and the beings of the past prophets. It was not manifestation of his mind. So that's just something I wanted to share with you with regards to yesterday. Now today, a big part, if not the whole part, will deal with women's issues as it relates to the Quran and some Sunnah. See, one of the things that everybody needs to keep in mind is the situation in which the Quran was revealed 1400 years ago. In that time, and for many centuries thereafter, there were certain assumptions about women. Their nature, their interests, their capabilities, physical and mental. And in the time that the Quran was revealed, the nature of women was very low, almost subhuman. The Quran actually addresses the community and says to them in one verse to not bury your child, your girl children. It was a practice in that time. So just think, the idea of burying a child who's a girl, what the nature of and the understanding of women may be at that time.
Alive.
Buried alive, correct. And of course there were people in pre-Islamic Arabia that opposed this, and some are known in history as having freed many children, you know. So it's not like the humanity was not there amongst any of the people, but in general, the impression of women was they were subhuman, that they were intellectually deficient, that they were spiritually deficient, that at certain times of the month they were filthy and dirty. These are the impressions that were there before the Prophet ﷺ started preaching and before the Quran was being revealed. Now, after the Quran was revealed and the Prophet ﷺ passed away, the world didn't change. People forget that as the Islamic empire expanded, that did not mean that the purity of Islam remained. For sure, the message of Islam went in a backward direction after the death of the Prophet ﷺ. As would happen with any great leader or messenger when they were to pass away, you don't expect the message to elevate. The message went on a decline, whereas the empire did expand. And as empires go, when you're competing with other empires, the message of Islam was certainly a much stronger force than maybe other forces in other civilizations. But that expansion shouldn't be confused with progress as far as Islam is concerned. Because in there was a lot of slavery, there was a lot of debauchery, there was the propagation of harems and concubines, there was the spreading of marrying children, as young as 9, 10 years old. There's a lot of injustice going on. Even the buying and selling of slaves was not till later. It was not in the Islamic Empire. It was not in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So we should never confuse the great expansion of the Islamic Empire with some kind of relationship to the message of Islam, because the message of Islam in the pure form is confined to those 23 years in which the Quran was revealed and the Sunnah of the Prophet demonstrated what the Quran is in practice. Now, when you have mufassirin or scholars of the Quran looking at certain verses and trying to interpret them, and they think before they even start that women are ignorant and they're not as capable, and this is not only women. In different societies they may have different races that people assume are less capable. They'll have obviously gender, maybe certain opinions about children, maybe ethnic groups. But if this is the opinion within the minds of the mufassirin that they don't even think about before they start, meaning they grow up with this idea, these ideas are stronger than knowledge that you learn from other books or anything. The ideas that don't require any thought and any effort and are just a part of you. That, for example, a woman today can't go on the Hajj without a mahram, so she takes her 12-year-old boy with her. It's a ridiculous idea, but that's the rule. Because somebody thinks that that boy somehow is going to help this mother. Because they turn off the brain. They turn off the brain and they just look at certain texts without understanding their background and their context. So, the way when the Quran is being revealed, someone could say, well, why didn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just come and say the women are equal to the men? Well, I give people the example about magic. Why didn't the Quran say magic is fake? It could have said that. It is fake. We know that. But why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say in the Quran it's fake? Instead, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to stay away from it. Now, there's a reason. Because the primary concern of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your iman. Because He knows that with faith, you will move in the right direction. The belief in one God, the belief in the next life, the belief in revelation, these things will help you. He doesn't want to undermine that. So in Allah's wisdom, He knows that if He tells you that magic is fake, and you go, and the Prophet ﷺ is no longer there, and you see this guy perform a magical thing that you cannot explain, he is levitating, or he is cutting somebody in half and rejoining him and doing things that beyond your explanation, that person will say, this prophet has said that magic is fake. I have seen magic with my own eyes, it's real. What do you think that's going to do to his iman? In his belief in this prophet. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to be there, and the Prophet ﷺ is not going to be there to explain how the trick is done. That's not going to be a possibility. So instead, to protect you, He says, stay away from it. And that is your protection from magic, without going into it and saying it's true or false. He doesn't say it's true, and he doesn't say it's false. The same thing about fortune telling. There's a famous hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ says that the jinn go to the extreme levels of the heavens, and sometimes they pick up the angel and they pick up one piece of the truth. Now this is a metaphor for what? This is a metaphor for when you go to the fortune teller and every once in a while they get something right. And when they get something right, you're hooked. Right? You're hooked. Because they said, oh, your mother, did your mother pass? Yes, my mother passed away. Boom, you're hooked. Now, the hadith says, and with that one truth, they'll mix 1,000 lies. Because they don't know anything. It's all fake. So, but, again, no one's going to be there to protect you. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said it's a sin to participate in anything that tries to foretell the future. It's not saying that they can do it, but it's trying to protect you from it. The same thing has to do with the situation of women. If the Prophet ﷺ came and said, oh, the women, they're equal to the men in intellectual capability, all these people would say, this guy is a foolish guy. He didn't even say anything like that, and they said he's a foolish guy. Everything you see he said is so just and so reasonable and so fair and so obvious, and they still called him a madman. Can you imagine if he said things that completely went against their ingrained ideas about women? It will undermine their ability to hear about Tawheed. It will undermine their ability to hear about the Akhirah and about all the benefits that Islam can bring, because they will be blinded. Even today, I can tell you, I go to some people, I talk to a guy, and I tell him something about women. He doesn't want to hear anything else I have to say. I give him Quran, I give him Hadith, he doesn't want to hear nothing. Because in his mind, this guy is doing blasphemy. He's saying that the woman is as smart as the man. And just me telling him that, there's nothing he's going to listen to. Nothing. He don't want to hear anything else. Because for some reason, he thinks that that's such a fundamental part of his faith. So the Quran deals with this in a very ingenious way. Especially for the people who are to come later. Because the Quran and the Prophet ﷺ put us on a nice trajectory to progress. Time and time again in the hadith, you'll find that the Prophet ﷺ is correcting people. He's not going out and just giving speeches, but when they say the woman, when she has a monthly course, she can't come to masjid, then they say, of course she can come to masjid. He corrects it. When they say that, oh, you know, that the passing of a woman in front of you breaks your salah, I said, this is ridiculous. When the Prophet ﷺ in our home, I would put my feet in front of him when he used to pray. Time and time again, the Prophet ﷺ is correcting. 23 years he corrected. But the Quran took a very interesting approach. The Quran, first of all, did something which is very interesting. One of the conceptions of women that even exists till today, but existed certainly in that time, is the sense of attraction. The idea was that men are attracted to women, like sometimes in improper, lustful ways. But the women, they're not. The women are not attracted to the men in the similar way. And so, the women have to cover very much, and the men not so much. Well, why? Because they had this assumption about women. They didn't know what women are really like back then. So they had this assumption. But if you look at the Quran, when it talks about this situation, what does it talk about? It talks about in the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, where the woman is the one who is in lust, and the beautiful person is the man. So it completely flips the idea that everybody has in a very obvious way for anyone who wants to see. And because most of the people didn't see this and didn't think this way, when they look at certain verses in the Quran, they interpret it in a way that says, oh, well, the women, they're not very much attracted to men, so we don't have to worry about them. So in some verses, they interpret it not worried about the women. But when the Quran talks about this subject matter, it uses the example in the complete opposite, where yes, the women, just like men, are human beings and have emotions just like men do. In another verse, with regards to capabilities, Time and time again in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives story of community after community in which prophets come. And what does the community do? Brother, what does the community do when the prophet comes? They don't want to hear it. Time and time. Sometimes some prophets, they say, live 1,000 years and the people didn't listen to them. But there's one instance in which a prophet called and someone responded in a positive way. Does anybody know who that is? No, the empire. It is the story of the Queen of Sheba. The Queen of Sheba is the sole example in which a prophet calls upon a leader of a qawm, a community, and as opposed to rejecting and fighting, she goes through a spiritual journey and submits. And so I thought it's such an important thing that I am going to, it's very easy to hear, a nice story from, this is in Surah Naml. This is after the story we talked about yesterday where the ant, who was here, remember the ant? Telling the other ants, get out of the way. Sulaiman Islam is coming. And Sulaiman Islam heard that ant. And what did Sulaiman Islam say? He says, praise be to God, meaning he said, he thanked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this capability. Instead of arrogating himself that I am so great that I can hear an ant, which is beyond anything that anybody in this dunya can do, he humbled himself by giving all credit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. After that, right after that sequence, it continues in Surah Naml, verse 20. And one day, this is Sulaiman alayhi salam, he looked in vain for a particular one of the birds. And so he said, how is it that I do not see the hoopoe, which is a type of bird, or could he be among the absent? If so, and for those who don't know, Sulaiman alayhi salam had the ability to communicate with animals. So just that background. If so, I will punish him most severely or will kill him unless he bring me a convincing excuse. But the hoopoe tarried but for a short while, and when it came, it said, I have encompassed with my knowledge something that thou hast never yet encompassed with thine, for I have come from thee to thee from Sheba with the tidings sure. Now here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making a point. Prior to this, it's talking about Sulaiman alayhi salam's great capacity and knowledge, and how he always gave credit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But yet it's saying that in this instance, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose, there is a bird that knows something that even Sulaiman alayhi salam doesn't know. So meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can choose to give knowledge to anybody. And in this case, he's giving knowledge to a bird that even Sulaiman alayhi salam doesn't have. So he says, behold, I have found there a woman ruling over them, and she has been given abundance of all good things, and hers is a mighty throne. What is the throne? That's her dominion. Throne is a symbol of her dominion and how splendid her dominion and her place is. And I found her and her people adoring the sun instead of God, and Satan has made them, their doings seem goodly to them. This is a theme repeated in the Quran over and over again. Sunnat Allah, we talk about it over and over. That one of the main reasons people don't believe is because of, one, they're doing what their forefathers did, and what keeps them away from the truth is that what they're doing seems normal and good. It becomes normalized to them. It becomes completely acceptable to them. And again here it's saying that it seemed goodly to them, and thus has barred them from the path of God so that they cannot find the right way. For they have come to believe that ought not to adore God, although it is He who brings forth all that is hidden in the heavens and earth, and knows all that you would conceal as well as all that you will bring open. God, save whom there is no deity, the sustainer in awesomeness, awesome almightiness and throne. Then it goes on. Said Sulaiman alayhi salam, we shall see whether thou hast told the truth or art one of the liars. Go with this my letter and convey it to them, and thereafter withdraw from them and see what answer they return. So he sends a letter to the Queen of Sheba. When the queen had read Solomon's letter, she said, "O you nobles, a truly distinguished letter has been conveyed unto me." Can you see the difference in her response right from the beginning? A distinguished letter has been conveyed unto me. How different that is than the response of so many other qawms that have been invited by prophets. Behold, it is from Solomon, and it says, "In the name of God, the most gracious, the dispenser of grace, God says, exalt not yourselves against me, but come unto me in willing surrender." She added, "O you nobles, give me your opinion on the problem with which I am now faced. I would never make a weighty decision unless you are present with me." This is amrahum shura bainahum. That's in the Quran. That when you decide matters, consult one another. She is doing that. They answered, "We are endowed with power and with mighty prowess in war, but the command is thine. Consider then what thou wouldst command." Said she, "Verily, whenever kings enter a country, they corrupt it, and turn the noblest of his people into the most abject. And this is the way they always behave. Hence, behold, I am going to send a gift to those people, and await whatever answer the envoys bring back." So now she's sending a gift to appease this other person, which is Sulaiman alayhi salam. Now when the queen's messenger came unto Sulaiman, he said, "Do you people mean to add to my wealth?" So Sulaiman alayhi salam gets that. He said, "You mean to add to my wealth? But that which God has given me." And, but what has he given him? He has given him material wealth and power, and he has also given him iman and faith and spirituality. So he's saying that what I have is much better than what, because remember, she is very powerful and she has a great dominion. But that's the distinction between his dominion and hers. So he said, "But that which God has given me is so much better than all that he has given you. Nay, it is only such as you that would rejoice in this gift of hers. Only people like you who have no concern for the spiritual realm are the ones that will celebrate these kind of material things and think that someone like me will be impressed by it. Go thou back unto them that have sent thee, for God says, we shall most certainly come upon them with forces which they will never be able to withstand, and shall most certainly cause them to be driven from that land of theirs, despicable and humble." So what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying here? He's not saying that we're just going to come and destroy you. What he's saying is that any community that exists absent of any spirituality and moral guidance is bound to destruction. It will happen on its own. Any civilization that doesn't factor in moral justice and a higher authority and accountability will destroy themselves. That is that, and this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is the sunnah Allah is. We talked about it. This is the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He's going to do something, often He's talking about His laws of cause and effect, and their doom being an outcome of them falling prey to those laws of cause and effect. So when Sulaiman alayhi salam learned that the Queen of Sheba was coming, he said to his council, "O you nobles, which of you can bring me her throne before she and her followers come unto me in willing self-surrender to God?" Before her followers come unto me as Muslimin. So already, Sulaiman alayhi salam is indicating that she's inclining towards Muslimin, means to submit to God. She's already inclining to a submission of God. So whatever correspondence has happened, and everything is not in the Quran is regarding that correspondence, she became somewhat convinced to the extent that she is now coming with her nobles to meet Sulaiman alayhi salam. Said a bold one of the invisible beings, or the jinn, "I shall bring it to thee before you rise from your council seat, for behold, I am powerful enough to do it and worthy of trust." So he's saying, go and get her throne. And this jinn says, "I will get it for you right away." But then Sulaiman alayhi salam says, "Answered he who is illumined with revelation, Sulaiman alayhi salam, nay, as for me, I shall bring it to thee before the twinkling of your eye." And just like that, it happened. And when he saw it truly before him, now this Sulaiman alayhi salam saw it truly before him, he exclaimed, and this is the nature of Sulaiman alayhi salam. This is one of his qualities. He exclaimed, "This is an outcome of my sustainer bounty." Again, he didn't give himself credit. Again, he's giving credit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. "This is the outcome of my sustainer bounty to test me as to whether I am grateful or ungrateful. However, he who is grateful to God is but grateful for his own good, and he who is ungrateful should know that verily my sustainer is self-sufficient, most generous in giving. And he continued, alter her throne. Alter her throne so that she may not know it as hers. Let us see whether she allows herself to be guided to the truth or remains one of those who will not be guided. So what did he do to the throne? So what he did is that, remember, the throne, it represents her dominion. And what he did is he altered the throne by adding faith and spirituality, because the throne represents just material. Her throne is just material, worldly power and might and luxury. He imbued it with faith so that now the throne is similar but different. Yeah.
Just one question. You say that she may not recognize it, or to see if she...
To see if she could recognize it, okay? So he wants to see if she's going to recognize the difference or not. And so as soon as she arrived, she was asked, is thy throne like this? And she answered, it is as though it were the same, but not so sure. So now she knows there's something different about this throne. On the outside, it looks exactly the same, but on the end, there's something off about it. And she recognized it. She sees some difference in this throne. And Suleiman said to his nobles, she has arrived at the truth without any help from us, although it is we who have been given divine knowledge before her and have long ago surrendered ourselves unto God. He is impressed by her ability to see this distinction. And she has recognized the truth, although that which she has been wont to worship instead of God has kept her away from the right path. For behold, she is descended of a people who deny the truth. So now let's wonder, why did she deny the truth? Because she is descended from a people who deny the truth. She is not a denier of the truth in the sense of someone who was called to the right message and rejected it, like a kuffar, one who covers and conceals. She is of those who are doing what has seemed goodly to her, she's inherited from generations in the past. But yet, when she was approached with a superior message, she recognized it in something. So, Suleiman Islam now is impressed that she was able, as soon as she left her environment, to decipher this throne, distinct from the original throne of just materialism. After a while, she was told, enter this court. But when she saw it, she thought that it was a fathomless expanse of water, and she bared her legs. So now there's this fathomless expanse of water. Now, Mufassirin said this kind of is, when you're leaving a comfortable realm of what you know, and what you understand, and what you believe, and you go into this unknown territory, it's scary. Even if you think intellectually it's the right thing, it's scary. It's unnerving. And so the Quran represented as a fathomless deep. But what is she doing? She's going. She's not reserved. She's going into that. Said he, Suleiman said, behold, it is but a court smoothly paved with glass. So now what is the role of the Prophet? To make the distinction between delusion and reality. To her it appeared like this fathomless pit of water, this fathomless expanse, and the Prophet is there to tell her, no, it's not. It is just a smooth piece of glass. So he is giving her the distinction between what her perception was, but the Prophet is endowed with the ability to see more clearly, and he explains it to her. Cried she, O my sustainer, I have been sinning against myself by worshipping aught but thee, but now I have surrendered myself with Solomon unto the sustainer of all the worlds. So you can see this one example is of a leader who is a woman. And it's surprising because there are many opinions out there that say, well, you know, the woman, she can't be the head of the country, or the woman, she can't be a head of a community, or the woman, she can't be. But we have here an example of a woman who's the head of a splendid qawm, that when she was called to imbue it with some spirituality, other than many of the other qawm that existed and many other prophets that come, she submitted willingly without much reservation. Now, 9:45. You got 5 minutes. 5 minutes, okay. So in closing, couple of things I want to talk about. The best example I can give to try to understand how the Quran deals with certain particular situations that existed in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and how they can be misconstrued to draw wrong conclusions about women. The best example, I think, is the one that relates to credit contracts and the call that there should be 2 witnesses, and if not 2 witnesses, then 1 man and 2 women, so that if one woman was to get confused, then the other can remind her. This has been used time and time again as some kind of indictment towards the woman's intelligence, to the point that some will calculate that she is 50% less intelligent than the man. Now, before we go into the explanation of this, the first thing you have to think is that you have eyes in this dunya 1400 years later, and you should see and not deny that this reality cannot be, because we see it. There are women who are in the highest levels of all disciplines. Some have won Nobel Prizes. Some are astrophysicists. The women, they do everything. Given the opportunity, they do everything. So it can't be that this verse is saying that the woman is dumber than the man, or the woman is a lot dumber than the man. Of course it can't be. But if you read this discourse, and we don't have time to read the whole discourse, but if you read this discourse is not about women. This discourse is about protecting the interests of 2 parties in a contract. And in that time, there is no institutions, there is no video recording, there is no audio recording, and there is very little literacy. So they have to deal with that reality. On top of that, they are a community which has oppressed women for centuries, has not educated them, has not let them participate in trade, has not let them participate in business, has secluded them. So to think that the woman is as capable as a man in that situation would be ridiculous. But that is the situation in which the Quran is being revealed. And the Quran is not going to turn a blind eye to the reality of the situation. The Quran is going to give an advice and guidance that works with the reality on the ground. So in that reality, this is the advice that he gave. But the question is that if time was to move forward and women became as capable, and in some instances more capable than men, and if there was a situation where I need some witnesses, and there are 2 ignorant men and 2 PhD scholars women, who is the better witness? Who is the one that better fulfills the objective of the Quran, of the Sharia? And this principle, the fuqaha have not missed. They call it maqasid al-Sharia, the underlying purpose of the law. And they apply it time and time again. Umar al-Khattab applied it when there was the famine and they were chopping the hands, and he suspended it. He suspended it because he understood what the maqasid was, the purpose was, and he understood that under famine, I'm not fulfilling the maqasid. He also did it when they had conquered a lot of land, and the Quran says that to the Prophet is 1/5 of the spoils, meaning 4/5 of the spoils goes to the soldier. But when they were expanding so much, Umar al-Khattab said, no, I'm going to give you much less. I'm not going to give you the whole of Iraq and the whole of Syria. I'm not going to give you that. And he said, because he said the objective of the lawgiver wasn't to make wealthy all the soldiers. The objective of the lawgivers was to free people from the bondage of other ideologies so that they can hear Islam. So time and time again, the companions, after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, applied this principle. And the fuqaha had interpreted using certain terms, like there's a term istihsan, which is called juristic prevalence, and masala mursala, which is in the interest of the public. These rules were designed to go against the letter of the law, to go with the spirit of the law, to the point that Ibn Qayyim, who is a famous scholar, student of Ibn Taymiyyah, said, any rule that departs from justice to injustice, or departs from common good, maslaha, to harm, mafsada, is not a part of the Sharia, even if it's arrived at by a literal interpretation. Meaning, even if the literal interpretation says, do this, but if I do it, I do injustice, then that's against the Sharia. And I'm not going to blindly do something according to the letter of the law without taking account the spirit of the law. But when it came to women, this rule was not applied. Because they're not concerned about the women to apply the rule. That's not of interest to them. It comes in transactions, it comes in contract law, it comes in war. They always look at the overlying objective. But when it comes to a women's situation, they weren't so concerned about that. So they just go with the letter of the law. And now, in modern time, it's not surprising that the new scholars, and some of them women scholars, are looking at these self-same verses and they say, of course. Just like the Quran says, keep your horses ready for battle. It doesn't mean keep your horses ready for battle. All the scholars say, that does not mean horses. The horses mean what? What? Tanks, armies, military. So when the Quran says, 2 witnesses to 1 to protect the interests of these 2 people, everybody knows this means the interests of the people. And today, we don't need even witnesses. Today we have video recording, we have institutions, better than 2 witnesses. So if you're going to still follow the 2-witness rule in the 21st century, you are not fulfilling better the underlying objective of the law. For sure the Prophet ﷺ would do what is in the best interest of preserving the rights of all parties. That is his real interest.
Yeah, but isn't it different between 2 Muslims and between 2 non-disbelievers?
No, because your objective is what? You have 2 lying Muslims, thieves, and 2 virtuous Christians. And you have to pick 2 to protect the interests of these 2 people. 2 of them are related to one of them, and the other 2 are independent. Who are you going to pick?
That's why you should have Sharia and government.
Well, if you have Sharia, the point is that, hey, Jazakallah khair, shukran, assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Sisters, brothers,